Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Algernon Pharmaceuticals is a drug repurposing company that currently has a number of clinical trials in the works to find treatments for things like stroke, pancreatic and lung cancer, chronic cough, and idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. The company recently announced an exclusive licensing agreement with Dartmouth College, and it's expanding its Ifenprodil cancer research program. Algernon's CEO, Christopher Moreau, joins us now to tell us more and talk more about all kinds of things at the company. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Cindy. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. All right. Well, with the stock closing at 12 cents recently, that means the stock is up almost 50% from 3 weeks ago, which on July 23rd, it was an 8-cent close. So do you think the stock has finally hit the bottom?
I'm hoping. I'm hoping it finally hit the bottom. I think that difficult to make predictions, but it appears that the investors that were really interested in the Algernon story because of Ifenprodil and our work to see if Ifenprodil could help patients who had acquired COVID may have hit the exits. And over the last number of weeks, that's probably been a key issue in terms of the stock price. So we recently published our quarterly, our Q3, and just with all of the other programs and the work we're doing, I think that the stock is starting to move in the right direction.
And now that the pandemic is sort of raging again, any regrets, or are you good with that decision?
No, I mean, we have corporately, we don't have any regrets that we tested Ifenprodil for COVID. I can't imagine not having done it. We did it. We went on our own. We didn't have any help financially. The company, its investors, we covered those costs to see if it could help. We really didn't have a choice except to go and try to help the people who were really sick. And that includes people that are hospitalized. 85% of those people will get better, but you don't know who. And so 15% will end up quite sick. But I don't, for the company to spend 25, 30, 40 million on a phase 3 trial, that's a very, very significant amount of capital. We would have to access that capital. And I think that, the drug would have to have done much better than it did to justify a phase 3 trial. So I'm very comfortable with our decision.
Okay, so now you're looking at Ifenprodil for cancer. What made you look at additional diseases like that?
Well, we've there's been a lot of research done on Ifenprodil. It's an NMDA receptor antagonist, so it binds to the NMDA receptor, and with specificity, a certain area. And there's been lots of research done on Ifenprodil. It's a 40-plus-year-old drug. It's very, very safe. There's been research done at Dartmouth by Dr. William North on pancreatic cancer. He's shown that certain type of cancer cells express the NMDA receptor, and when you have a blockade of that receptor, there seems to be a reduction in tumor growth. And it's an interesting avenue for us to explore because we know Ifenprodil is a very safe compound. It's been proven safe historically. It was safe in our 150 patient COVID study. So to think that it might be active as a anti-cancer drug, they did some preclinical work for small cell lung cancer, combined Ifenprodil with a drug called topotecan. And the data is quite impressive preclinically. So we've got this access to Ifenprodil. We've been investing in it. We can run a phase 2 trial somewhere in the 3 to 4 million US. And that's one of the benefits of doing a repurposed drug trial. Certain elements of your toxicity work, genotox and cGMP tox, you don't need to repeat. And so I think it's a good idea for us to try to explore Ifenprodil, and we only need one of these indications to be a home run.
And why didn't you run the idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis chronic cough study in the US?
Well, Ifenprodil isn't approved for sale in the US, so it's approved in Japan. And had we tried to run the IPF study in chronic cough in the US would have, the FDA would have asked us to repeat a phase 1 plus tox studies. The reason they didn't do it for COVID was because of COVID, very special circumstances, pandemic. But COVID wasn't at play last year when we had to make a decision, where do we run our IPF and cough study? Australia was chosen. We've talked about it before. There's a 41% refundable tax credit. We actually have a receivable of about 2.4 million Canadian expected from the work we've done on COVID and our other research. But and Australia has a relatively friendly policy that allows companies like Algernon to bring in a drug for a human trial in Australia, even if that drug's not approved in Australia. You have to have the safety background. So what's sort of changed now is that since the FDA now has the experience with Algernon and with Ifenprodil and its safety history, I think we're going to have possible leeway to move more quickly by doing and considering the US for some of our clinical trials moving forward for pancreatic and small cell lung cancer. We do plan on filing a pre-IND application for both. We're also going to do a feasibility study in Australia. That's also an option. But the whole concept of Algernon was to be able to move a drug quickly into clinical trials. And before COVID, the US FDA, in our view, would have taken a position that we needed to do a lot of work before they would allow us to bring the drug in.
Got it. Okay, so is it true that a phase 1 cancer study, you might see some data on efficacy in the phase 1?
Yes, it's a good point. So a typical phase, so 3 study phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is safety and dose. Phase 2, testing your drug in the patient population you're trying to treat for the first time. Phase 3, bigger phase 2. In the case of cancer, though, so typically, in a normal phase 1 trial is done with healthy patients. In a phase 1 cancer study, just ethically, and especially with these new treatments, you can't expose healthy people to some of these compounds. So you'd actually be doing safety and dose with patients that are suffering from the cancer that you're trying to treat. They're typically smaller studies. You're not going to see strong P values, but in a typical phase 1 cancer study, you do have an opportunity to see some signal. And that would be exciting to be able to report when you're doing a phase 1 that you could see some either reduction in tumor size, or, it just depends on how you set up that phase 1 and how it's designed. But yes, you could. It's a good question. You could see some signal from a phase 1.
And I imagine you'd have a lot of people lining up to take part in this study. I don't think it'll be hard for you to find the people.
Yes, but and keep in mind that whenever a study is done, it's done at a local center. It's not done across the whole country.
Right.
So you have to, when Novatech does a feasibility study for us, they actually will contact PIs, principal investigators that run clinics. Let's say we do a feasibility study for pancreatic cancer. These would be cancer doctors that specifically manage patients that have pancreatic cancer. They'll reach out to them, tell them about Algernon, tell them about Ifenprodil, and you have to get a physician who runs trials that says, I want to run this trial for my patients. But you're really restricted to that clinic and his patients. And it depends on how sick those patients are and what stage you're trying to treat them, early stage or stage 4 or chemo-refractory, relapsed. So, they're small cell lung cancer. It's a very small percentage of people that you can access, and they have to be well enough to get into the trial. So, when you get into specialty areas, the number of patients are more limited. In Australia, you have a smaller population, and therefore, on orphan indications and some diseases, you're looking at probably a slower enrollment rate, and that's sort of the trade-off. But it's quite early. We're still in the early stages, and if we can, we'd like to run the trials in the U.S. as well, have multi-center.
Got it. All right. Well, can investors learn anything from Algernon's rise to 50 cents Canadian back in May of last year?
Well, I think I think what you can learn is that when you're running a phase 2 trial, what you should see is a building of value creation for investors, an increase in liquidity, and then you often have the binary results of what the data is. No company controls the data, and but I think the energy in the company last year, COVID was a major part of it, because the world was and is still in a difficult spot, and is desperately looking for therapeutic agents. A certain percentage of the population just simply, it seems, won't take the vaccine. Younger people can't take the vaccine. It's not approved yet. So there's a great deal of pressure, therefore interest. And if a therapeutic steps up and it works, then that's going to be very rewarding for everybody. So that was the hope of Algernon, and still is our model, to be running phase 2 trials and have value creation before the data comes out, but to have multiple trials going on, because we can run them relatively inexpensively compared to taking a new chemical entity from the beginning, from the lab, and bringing it into human trials. That's the difference with Algernon.
And with these trials, you have some incredible consultants that you're working with too, aren't you?
We got very lucky. We've been able to, we're very aggressive. We act very quickly. We will reach out to these experts, and but it's not about the conversations that we have. It's about the work we're trying to do, and the data. So in the case of our recent license with Dartmouth and our discussions with Bill North, Dr. North, he's now a professor emeritus, and he's worked for years, 40 years, investigating cancers and receptors, and he was very excited that Algernon was going to take up the torch and start to look at small cell lung cancer and pancreatic cancer. And if it's good science, then I think you have a good chance of attracting really good quality experts who want to step in and contribute and help. And we've been really lucky with all of the medical, scientific, and business advisors that we've been able to bring to the team.
Well, let's hope for some excellent results as well. Christopher Moreau from Algernon Pharmaceuticals, thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay, Cyndi, nice to speak with you.